put your hands together tonight for Stephanie Lechner.
It's the summer of 2014, and I'm living in Denver, my first summer in Denver, and I'm obsessively cleaning my apartment, getting ready for my second date with Kevin. I'm nervous, like really nervous, guys, and I think to better explain it is the stakes were a little higher for me in this case. I'm 30. I had never been on a second date. I had never been kissed, let alone even had a guy hold my hand. And I know you're probably wondering, how does something like this happen? But we probably should go back a little bit into sophomore year of high school. I was always really shy around boys, and then I met Mitch, who was a year older than me. He was so sweet and smart, so cute. And guys, he was the state champion diver in Indiana, so he was a big deal. And my friends, who were mostly guys at the time, had never seen what I look like when I'm smitten, and they thought this was hilarious. And they mocked me at every turn. And at the end of the year in my yearbook, there was a guy, a friend of mine, who was a little cartoonist, and he drew a full-page spread of Mitch in various positions in his Speedo. It didn't take long for this incessant mocking to get to Mitch, and he did not feel the same way as I did, and I was promptly rejected. And I gotta tell you, I think it was at this moment where it was forged in my mind that my interest in men was always gonna be somewhat of a joke. And I carried that with me through college, and I hid behind religion, I hid behind ambition, and it was just comfortable to just not be a dater. And then I got to New York, and I was in my mid-20s, and I thought, now's the time to learn how to date. This is what humans do, I'm gonna date. So I signed up for OkCupid, and I just hit the ground running, and I gotta tell you, New York City is not the place to learn how to date. I was a serial first dater. I had mastered the little tap dance that you do on a first date, and I called it like a one-woman show. I kind of always walked out with a fan, but never a second date. It was hard to create that connection, that intimacy when you're saying goodbye to someone at a subway stop, and it just went on for 5 years, and I couldn't make any connection happen, and I really craved it. I was lonely. I had seemed like I was kind of on the outside of the normal human experience that everyone else had, and the older I got, the more weird it was that I wasn't getting any success. So I moved to Denver for a job, and the dating scene was just a little bit different there. All the men hiked 14ers and caught a lot of fish and wanted me to go camping. And so it was just a different set of challenges for me, because I don't do any of those things. And so I found this guy. His name was Kevin. He was the same age as me. He was a fellow writer, had no interest in camping, preferred coffee and books to aggressive sporting adventures. So I was really excited when he asked me out, and the first date we went on was to the Denver Science Museum, which is just such a sweet and geeky thing to do. I was so excited. And when I met him, I noticed just how sweet and kind he was, about just a little bit taller than me, glasses, dimples, very quiet, but not in the way that was awkward. It was in the kind of silence that drew me in, because he was just very warm. And we walked through the exhibits, and I remember we went to the planetarium, and I just remember how sweet and romantic it felt looking up at the fake stars. And I was like, oh, this guy's really nice. And we went to dinner afterwards, and he was telling me that he had never seen the movie The Godfather, which is a really big deal for me. It was a big movie in my childhood. My parents loved it. In college, I was obsessed with it, so I always kind of gauged a man by his Francis Ford Coppola opinions. And so the fact that he hadn't seen it was important to me, but then it also kind of led into a natural second date outing. And he asked if we could get together and watch it. And as I drove away from that first date, I was like, oh shit, this is my first second date. This is go time. And I really just wanted to hit that marker, I wanted to have my first kiss. And I think, a lot of my friends were like, are you worried about having sex? And I was like, guys, that is a bridge too far. Like, it's too far. To me, I think it's good to set goals that are achievable and attainable, and that my goal was to have my first kiss. So, and obviously I wasn't going to share that with him because that's information that I knew would just make too much pressure on the situation. So I kept it inside, and we decided that he would come over to my place for our second date. And I started fussing around the apartment, and I offered to make dinner, and I made this really extravagant dinner, and I made filet mignon, creme brulee, all of these things. And that's kind of how I eat anyways. So I was nervous that my steak was sending too strong a message. So when he comes in, the first thing he does is he says, I don't really drink a lot of wine, so as a gift I brought you a copy of my favorite book. And he hands me a copy of House of Leaves. I don't know if you're all familiar with it. It's a really good book. And I just kind of swooned because I was like, can every man who shows up at my door show up with a book? This is amazing. And I'm sitting there prepping the dinner, and he's standing at the counter, and I just kind of nervously blurt out, I just want you to know, if you weren't here tonight, I'd be eating this good. Because I'm worried, here's a second date initiated by him, and I'm still worried that, as soon as he knows I'm interested, he's going to laugh and he's going to leave. And so we're sitting down on the couch watching the movie, and at this point, there's two selves I have inside of me. The one self that's nervous about the date, and the second self that's nervous about his opinion of the movie. And so, I'm watching it, when Sonny gets whacked, I'm just looking, I'm did he react like I react to that? What is his thoughts on this? And he's showing me nothing. But at the same time, I'm sitting next to him on the couch, and I'm trying to take all of my friends' advice that they've given me over the years. And I know that they've given me a little Cliff Notes version of how to get through a date and create physical connection. And they're so you need to find excuses to touch him, you need to flip your hair, and you need to make a lot of eye contact. So I'm trying to and connect to him, and then he leans over and he touches my hand and he says, so do you get your nails done or do you do it yourself? And I'm nervous about my cheap Target nail polish, and I'm I do it myself, is that okay? And it didn't occur to me that maybe his friends gave him the same advice, and he was trying a reason to touch me, and I was just taking everything literally. So the movie goes, credits roll, and I'm so, what'd you think? It's a good movie, right? and he's no, I really, really liked it. I can't wait to see the second one. And I'm thank God. And then he offers to do my dishes. He's you made dinner, let me do your dishes for you. And I'm no, it's fine. Don't worry about it. I'm happy to do them. And it again occurs to me a minute later that he's finding a reason to stay longer. And I'm just no, I don't want you to do my dishes. I'm taking the literal version of everything he's saying. I'm missing all the subtext. And we're standing there at my door making awkward conversation. It's this game of chicken where we're talking, but nothing we're saying is adding to the conversation. Just time. and he leans in and he gives me a hug goodbye. And I'm just all right. And he's but let's do this again next weekend. And I'm okay, I get a second chance. There was no kiss this night, but there's still a continuation of interest. So I'm still very hopeful and nervous at the same time. And so he invites me over to his place the next weekend. And he greets me. He's I watch TV down in my basement. I hope that's not a problem. And as I walk downstairs, I just think, fuck. There's two lazy boy recliners separated by a sizable end table. And all this time, I'm trying to think of how I can make moves on a couch. And I wasn't prepared for obstacles to get to him. And so we're just sitting there watching the movie. We decided to save Godfather 2 for another night and watch something a little lighter. And we're just kind of talking, and he kept pausing. He's are you sure you want to watch the movie? I'm yeah, but I also want to get to know you a little bit better. And we're having a great time. And he notices that I'm very cold about halfway through the movie. And he gets up and he brings me a blanket. And he's are you doing all right? I was yeah, it's just it's really cold. So I lean my hand over, and I'm see, I'm not making it up. I'm actually cold. And in that moment, he grabs my hand. He's like, oh, you are cold. But he doesn't let go. I know. And that's kind of what I felt like, is I was like, because in this moment, I was very keenly aware of, like, a boy I like is holding my hand right now. He is interested. And I'm too distracted to pay attention to the movie at this point because I know what's probably going to happen at the end of this. And as long as I've prepared for this, I wasn't prepared for how nervous I was going to feel. So after the movie's over, I just like hid in the bathroom for a good 10 minutes, figuring out what my next move will be. So we're standing at his door, and we're doing that same tango of like, oh, how's your week going to be? Oh, busy with work. Boring, boring, boring. And he leans in for a hug. And I kind of relax because I think, maybe this is all there ever will be with Kevin. Maybe we're just going to be friends. And as we were parting ways, I see his head come towards me as if in slow motion, and he presses his lips gently against mine. And I just think, oh, it's happened. I did it. Like, this experience, I could check the box, and as much as I imagined I wasn't prepared, I thought that was it. I was like, we did it. And and then I feel his lips part and his tongue come into my mouth, and I'm like, oh shit. Like, this is not what it's like in the movies. The movies is just like, they don't do the tongue, and it's just very neat and tidy, and this was a little messy, and that I just kind of noticed everything, like the way he smelled, the way he tasted, that very strange sensation when someone else's tongue is in your mouth and you have no control over it. And I'm getting swept away in this moment, so much so that I'm standing on my toes at this point, and I step all over him on my way down. And he's like, oh, I'm really sorry, as if it was his fault. And I just like have this one surge of courage, and I just like grab him, and I plant one more kiss on him. And I say goodnight, and I step outside, and I'm just kind of like basking in this excitement because this very normal thing for everyone else finally happened for me. I felt human. I felt hopeful and excited. And I was just kind of doing that like giddy girl dance out by my car. And I was like, yes. And then like it didn't take long for that to fade and me just be like, there's no way he enjoyed that. There's just no way. Like, he could tell I had no idea what I was doing. I'm never going to hear from him again. This is like, it's so quickly how my neurosis just set in, and I'm just like beating myself up over it. And all of a sudden I hear him come out the front door, and he's like, hey, don't forget, we need to watch Godfather 2 sometime. Thank you.